I have a question, I'm glad you brought that up. So I guess what they were saying is that they didn't want to feel pressure to continue to market the property.
Yes.
Okay, so if they signed this form, does that force them to market it? What if they want to just market it by the phone, or they want to mark, that what I'm getting, they just want to go through the showing hassle again, all right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, let's go through the other options here.
okay, all right.
Number 2 is line 56 there. Buyer agrees to close within 30 days after the date of delivery of receipt of an acceptable offer or equivalent, or close no later than date specified in the agreement, and or line 61, buyer removes any and all contingencies and conditions as to buyer's obligations under the agreement, including any and all inspections, financing, making this an all-cash agreement. Buyer acknowledges that should buyer fail to close for any reason, buyer will forfeit all earnest money and seller may pursue other legal remedies. Now, think of buyer number 1 under contract subject to their house selling. The seller has agreed to buyer number 2 as a backup. But they go back to buyer number 1, say, you've now got 24 hours to respond. If that buyer says, hey, I love this house, I don't want to lose it, if the terms are what we just read, they're removing any and all contingencies. If that buyer has to get financing, if they don't have the wherewithal to have cash in case the lender said no, your ratios are too high or whatever, they would not want to have that checked off, right? Because there's no way that they're going to be able to perform. And plus they're going to lose their earnest money and be subject to be sued. So that's an option that would be.
The seller marked that. That's going to be the seller that's filling this out, right?
Yeah, well, this is also a buyer and seller agreement. This is kind of a
Right. So
They
they would want to
negotiated.
agree to that.
Right, yeah. And then 4, buyer agrees to remove the aforementioned, all other conditions remain in the agreement. 65 and 66 line items. That's the one that more often is checked off. Why? Because it makes sense for all concerned. Because even the buyer that says, hey, I've got it under contract, I have reason to believe this is going to close on time or whatever, and we'll change our plans a little bit, but we're still subject to a final walkthrough. I want to make sure that the house is in the condition it was in as of the binding agreement date. And if there's a hailstorm the night before closing and damages the property, then you see there's some protection for the buyer in that situation. That's really why it's most often. So notification to the seller is line 67 through. Buyer must within the aforesaid hours notify a licensee, advising the removal of the contingencies and so forth. So let's turn over to the next page, the buyer and seller sign. Here's where the seller has already got buyer number 1 under contract, subject to house sale. They then get an offer, and this is the methodology by which they notify and communicate to the other side. You'll notice line 3, contingencies contained in the seller's right to continue market addendum, to be removed within, let's say, 24 hours or whatever was originally agreed upon. And then by delivery of this form in line 8, the undersigned seller hereby gives X amount of time, usually that same amount of time, that seller has received another offer acceptable to the seller, and the buyer is expected to respond to this notice no later than. Now, many times I've had occurrences where, let's say the buyer and seller agreed to a 24-hour right of first refusal, and the seller has then notified to launch the start of the 24 hours. Almost immediately, I got a response back through the buyer's agent after discussing with the buyer. Lucky, I'm so sorry, my buyer really wants the house, but they've explored other options and bridge loans are too expensive for them, and we haven't even got the first showing on their house. And we're going to have to give up. And you can go ahead and get this signed off without having to wait the full time with the buyer's permission. They've got the full length of time to respond. That's the other thing to keep in mind is the length of time. If you're working on the buyer side, and you really think as though your buyer wants to protect their interests, and unfortunately learns that their house didn't sell as quickly as they thought, you would encourage them to do what? To go to their lender and have them outline the terms of the bridge loan. And if there's a property, if they're current residents, they may have a sizable amount of equity. And the bank may say, we'll advance the equity to you to allow you to purchase. And we'll defer. You won't have a second payment for at least 6 months. Many times you have an automatic renewal. But the cost of doing that, you'll have another set of closing costs, temporary loan versus permanent loan. But you see, that is an option. And usually homeowner says, thanks, I didn't even thought about that. And then the next day, you come back and they may say, well, my husband and I talked about it. And, we don't want to go that route, but thank you for letting us at least make that decision. But I have had some others. Now, if you have somebody that's being transferred, and again, many times we're dealing with transferees. And if you haven't been familiar, if you remember 23 years I was HR director, I wrote relocation policies, because we asked people to transfer and basically a lot of times the company who's the employer will be paying for 2 temporary living expenses, 2 house hunting trips, broker commission, and things of that nature that might alleviate that kind of situation. Or they may even have a buyback. Homeowner or employee, you've got 2 months to sell on your own. God bless you if you get more than what we will probably offer you by way of averaging 2 appraisal prices. And many times they're better off to sell it on their own, because what happens is many times that unless you're kind of in the background or they have an inside position of the management side of it, which I did, I learned because I myself was transferred. And many times the company will dictate to the appraisers, price this as though the property will close within 30 days or 60 days or whatever. And you may be in a buyer's market that homes are on the market for 4 to 6 months as a typical sales time. So what happens to the pricing? The dictum from the company, appraisers price this as though it closes within 60 days versus 6 months. Is the price going to be higher or lower than what the homeowner typically is expecting? Lower. To sell quicker, and normally to get that is going to be a lower the price, aggressive pricing, that kind of thing. So usually it behooves the relocating family to go try to sell it. But the point I'm making is many times there are going to be buyers that do preserve and protect their interests and don't just say, seller, terminate my contract and refund my earnest money. They'll want to go ahead and say, no, I'm moving forward, and using one of those options. And then lastly, buyer's response. Look at lines 14 through 17. By signing option number 1, the undersigned buyer agrees to waive the contingencies contained in the right to continue market addendum and to close as specified in said addendum. Or line 22, by signing this option number 2, the undersigned buyer declares that he cannot or will not remove the contingency. And many times that is what is selected, because they don't want, like I said, to get a bridge loan, or they just have to walk away. Now this is a related point. This is why I recommend to everybody, if you're starting to deal, let's say if you have a buyer orientation presentation, I encourage you to attend. Net is so grateful to have a selfless presentation on it, what she does. If you learn that your buyer does have a house to sell and close before they can purchase, strongly encourage them to get their house on the market ASAP, so that marketing time is, and then Mr. Buyer, put yourself in the shoes of the seller. If I showed you property tomorrow, for someone to get the pre-approval back from the lender, as I recommended, you're ready to go, we saw a property tomorrow, in today's market, you need to move quickly. We need to move quickly, and if we present an offer subject to house sale and we haven't had your house on the market, what's the seller? They're going to say, well, Jesus, this could be a year before your house sells, kind of thing. So you're helping yourself. So I'm recommending to help yourself and help myself to minimize wasted time. Put your home on the market. Let me put your home on the market quicker than later. And we'll go ahead and begin, set you up on auto notified. You'll see what the market is, and when you're comfortable, then we'll go forward. Does that make sense? Okay, seller's receipt, whatever options. Okay, is there any questions about that?
Oh, yes, on line 16.
Okay.
The seller notice to buyer. What is if silent?
If silent is not addressed, if there's a if it's not addressed in the addendum or not specified, that's oftentimes not included. I'm kind of glad it's in there. These are, by the way, TER, one of the reasons why your dues are so expensive each year. You know, $525 for local, state, and national dues. Local is MTAR, state is TER, and national is what? NAR, right to use the word, copyrighted word, realtor, is because we have the benefit, you all have the benefit of all the documents that showed up on the TARnet. And by the way, you have access through Dalu to search the TARnet forms. So that basically, by reading the whole sentence, by signing, the undersigned buyer agrees to waive the contingencies containing the seller's right to continue and to close as specified and said addendum, or if silent, then according to the purchase and sale agreement. So if anything, what condition was not specified in the right, the document right to continue to market, you go back to the purchase and sale agreement
You see what it
to
says?
see what it says.
Okay, I got it.
Thanks for asking though. Okay, we'll move on, multiple offer disclosure. Here, the best example would be, let's put you in the shoes of being a listing agent. And you got the first offer that came in. And you may have even presented it to them. Typically, offers have an expiration date. Remember the last paragraph on the 10-page form, or close to the last, is the time limit of the offer. Do recommend if you're a buyer's agent, go ahead and discuss with the buyer, go ahead and put a reasonable time frame in there. Put yourself in the shoes of seller. They may say, well, how much time would you recommend? You know, and customarily what we see is roughly 24 hours plus or minus. If you're ready to submit an offer at 5 p.m., I did learn something from a real estate attorney who wrote the book, The Paper Trail, 2 books. Really good, accomplished real estate attorney. And years ago he said, most families make important decisions during dinner time, you know, when they get off work. However, if you're presented an offer at 5 p.m., be your luck, they're working overtime and they're too late, you know, they're tired, they decide to go ahead and after work tomorrow to think about the terms. So it might be that they don't even see the offer for a while because they got tied up at work or whatever. So the suggestion being, rather than if you slice it 24 hours, 5 p.m. to 5 p.m. the next day, Mr. Bauer, under those circumstances, you know, you might want to think about 8 p.m. the next day. You're going to have some buyers who say, Lucky, thank you for pointing it out. In today's market, I agree with you, it is a seller's market. I know many times I'm competing with others. I want to try to close the door on other buyers on their offers for competition with mine. And I'd like to give the seller 2 hours to respond or consider it expired. Well, don't come across in a condescending sort of way. I'll go ahead and put whatever you want in, but let me share with you some things that I've learned in my experiences and been trained at. Put yourself in the shoes of the seller, getting your offer. How would you respond? I think you'll find examples where a seller says, you know, I hadn't thought about that. If I actually got that short of a time frame, and knowing my work schedule, I probably wouldn't even see this thing until it's already expired. Or even if I did, I'd start thinking, well, geez, if they're going to be that unreasonable, 2 hours, then what are they going to be like if I accept the terms from contract to closing? They're going to be unreasonable on repair issues, if any. And oftentimes they'll say, well, thank you for bringing that out, Renee. And yeah, we'll go ahead. Or you may have found from the listing agent that when you inquire, is the property, you're getting ready to write an offer, you call the listing agent, right? Recommend not wasting 2.5 hours. See if it's still available. See if the door's still open. You showed it yesterday, but there might have been 20 showings till now, and they had 5 offers, and they accepted one of them this morning. And if you didn't make that call, is it still available? They say, well, I've got 3 offers on the table. Thank you. You ask what? How much time do I have if my buyer chooses to submit an offer which is going to be competing with others? I will recommend highest and best. I'm going to tell them that they're not necessarily going to have another bite at the apple. But if they choose, and then, good question, Christy, that's a fair question. I won't present all the offers until 5 p.m. today. So as long as I get an offer before then, we're okay? Yes. And you could be the last offer on the table and your buyer's offer accepted. That's happened to me. Hopefully it'll happen to you. We're not in the state of New York or California outbound. The first offer that's submitted must be worked until either accepted or rejected before they start working others. Renee Miller corroborated what I already knew about New York. Somebody else corroborated with California. Thank God Tennessee's not like that. You know, you have every opportunity, your buyer has every opportunity to have an offer considered until the seller has agreed to terms in writing and it's been delivered. That's the key thing that some people get delivered and accepted and delivered. So the time it's signed off is really not the binding agreement date. It's delivered back, buyer and seller, all the terms are signed off, saying all the terms have been accepted. And does that make sense? So here, the seller saying, you're a listing agent, you get buyer offer number 2 come in. Let me discuss with you your options. You don't have to use this form if you don't want. It's available because it's perceived as fair. Because buyer number 1, the agent called me. They asked me, Lucky, is your house listing still available? I've got a buyer interested in writing an offer. And I told them yes. They asked me, do I have any other offers we're competing with? I told them no, which is an accurate, honest answer at the time they called me. Now, subsequently, we got buyer offer number 2 come in. That agent called me. Lucky, is it still available? Yes, but I tell them we have an offer on the table. The seller will not respond to it until whatever time. So it's still available if your buyer number 2 wants to submit an offer. Now that buyer has a leg up. Would you not agree? Has a leg up on buyer number 1 because they didn't know that they were in a competing situation. So here, this buyer agent number 2 is saying, I recommend highest and best, because there is an offer, at least one offer you're competing with. So take that separate. Think back on buyer number 1. So you're talking to, as a listing agent, to the seller, saying, at this point, buyer number 1 does not know we're in multiple offer situation, which we are now in, because we just got the second offer. A way to really be perceived as we can go ahead and send this to any and all buyer who has submitted an offer, to let them know officially. It gives them an option. Let's go through this. Line 6 through 8, all interested parties are notified by fax or email that there have been what? Multiple offers made on the property. All buyers and representatives shall respond that they have received this multiple offer disclosure notification form by return fax or email to the listing licensee as set forth below. Seller requests that all interested purchasers submit their best offer no later than whatever time frame. Who decides? The seller. They are in control of this because they're sending out this to the buyers who've offered. And they put the time frame in there. Delivery of such offer may be by email or fax to the listing licensee. Line 13, 14, the listing licensee will deliver all offers to the seller, authorized representative no later than whatever the time frame. On the one that we had 30 written offers on my listing, I had advertised ahead because I knew we were going to have a lot of interest. I didn't realize 124 showings and 30 offers. I was thinking 8 or 10 offers, Interestingly, had we not had that, the first offer that was presented, I asked the buyers, and my daughter was husband and wife, would you have accepted that? Yes, it was a fair offer. But they wanted to go ahead and do what was advertised, and I said, there's no guarantee that's the best offer on the table. That happened to be the worst of the 30 offers. So had we not had that in place, they would have still been happy, but they would always have the unknown that we had one that they got $9,500 more, and that was about the highest we thought it would appraise for. So here, what line did I stop at?
Number 3, what's the usual time after you get all the offers in that you present? Like,
To give them an opportunity to amend their offer?
well, no, like the listing license or whatever, no later than, like, mine was 5 and I delivered it to them by 6. I mean, or
PM.
is that
On a big.
normal to get it out? I mean, like an hour for you to get your stuff together and be ready to present?
Yeah,
Or
an
it
hour is pretty.
pretty long.
No, an hour is really short. Because again, you have to think about, number one, you're sending this back to, let's say there's only 2 offers, and you send it to the buyer's agents. Hey, we want to be fair. We're notifying multiple offers. You could keep your offer in as is. You can increase it. You know, we don't want you to be disappointed that your offer was not accepted because you held back some money to negotiate with. That's sometimes I would recommend you have this kind of communication with. I've had this happen. I recommend highest and best. They came back and I said, I got bad news for you. They accepted another offer. Oh, lucky. We did have $1,000 in our back pocket that we thought we'd be able to negotiate with. And I remember you telling them, may not get another bite of the apple, and we just kind of were hopeful. So they regretted their decision, and I tried my best to let them know there was a high likelihood they wouldn't be able to. So max out. If you're going to be disappointed, this is a good phraseology to use. How would you react if you didn't get your offer selected? How badly does not getting it? I've had reactions, well, you know, Lucky, we're getting so tired of the process. We're chasing after these houses and taking time off of work, and this is as close to our dream house as possible. We'll do anything to make sure we get this one, you know. Or I'm okay, you know, we'll just continue to start from square one again, you know. And I said, well, that's your decision. And that causes you to decide what to offer, you know, and what's your risk, how much risk are you willing to take. Okay, does that make sense?
I gave them 24 hours, but then number 3, when I delivered the offers, that's what I'm asking about.
Yeah,
Hour
just nice
given
to
me
deliver offers.
between 5 p.m. and 6.
Yeah, typically, if you already got, let's say, 2 offers on the table, there it's not necessary to go a full 24 hours typically.
No, it's very long for me.
Yeah, depending on what time of day, if your seller doesn't decide until 9 o'clock at night, you're not going to give them until 10 o'clock at night, you know, to change their offer. They might be in bed, you know, the buyer. So it depends on the time of day that you're saying, we're going to let you know we're in multiple offers, and if it's 9 o'clock at night, you're sending this out, you've got till noon tomorrow, you know, 4 business hours or whatever. It just depends on the time of day, I think. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If it's at 10 o'clock in the morning and you get that second offer come in and your seller doesn't want to use this, to be fair, and that's the best thing to take away from this is it is a method of being perceived as fair to all associated with the transaction. By the way, we got a duty to be fair. If you remember the basic license aspects, duty to be fair and honest to all in a transaction. Now you got a fiduciary duty to represent the best interests of your client, and some mistake that. They put inordinate amount of interest on the best interest to the detriment of others, and not being honest with the other side. You got to be fair and honest, and that's what this is trying to do. Hey, Mr. Buyer number 1, we would not be fair. If this is my seller's decision, we would not have been fair with you to let you not know that you're now competing, because you now are in a position to amend your offer up until it's 10 o'clock now, and let's say it's 5 p.m. Renee, to answer your question, it's more of a constrained time frame normally on that, because usually it's just a decision on amending one part of the price. Although it could be other things. They may think, you know, now that I know that I'm competing.
Somebody else showing it too at 1 p.m. that afternoon. Somebody else was showing it and continue to let people look at it.
Yeah, and then you let them know, hey, we are already in multiple offer situation, and any and all offers must be submitted by X time frame, and that may be the revised time that you give the buyer number 1 to amend their. So that's what you, like at 10 o'clock, you send this out. I would recommend to the seller, you work until 5. Tell you what, we'll be getting together at 6 p.m. and let's go ahead and maybe my suggestion would be 6 p.m. Gives them enough time to amend if they're going to make a decision. Now, what else are you going to suggest to them, Mr. Seller? By using this, one downside is what? You could scare off any buyer that's previously, because unless their offer has been accepted in writing and delivered, it's open. They can withdraw at any time. So do you think there's some buyers out there that don't want to be competing? I have. They said, yeah, I don't want to get in a situation where I'll let somebody else have it kind of thing, and I'll just pull out. So that is a risk that the seller takes. I think there's more value in letting people know, in this market, buyers are scrambling to get properties they're happy with. Number one, they know that they're gonna be competing properly.
Along that line of thought, the person that was showing it at one, I knew her, and I thought, well, you know, but I couldn't decide whether to tell her that we're already, before she showed it, or wait till after she showed it. She showed it at one, I called her at like 1:30, said, what do they think? And I said, we're under multiple offers, want to let you know. But they didn't like it. So, should I have told her beforehand? Would that have been more, or can you wait till after they show it?
That's a gray area. I mean, you
Okay.
ultimately,
I couldn't decide if that would scare them off, make them not even want to show it, you know,
Yeah.
if they heard that.
it's, you know,
I think too much too. So.
yeah. Well, I'd rather have you on that side. Than
I
that.
know,
Oh, whatever, you
Yeah.
know.